Hey everybody, it's Eric from epautos.com, your libertarian car guy. And the wheel does turn, and the universe does change and evolve. Here we are in 2019, almost 2020, and Volvo has transitioned from being the Mrs. Doubtfire brand to being the sexy and performance brand. If anything, BMW and Mercedes are kind of getting a little bit stiff in the neck and becoming the car for the mature buyer. Whereas, have a look at this sexy 2019 S60. It's a really, really slick, attractive looking car. Certainly one of the most attractive looking cars in the segment. And beauty goes more than skin deep. Surprisingly, if you have not kept up with Volvo, the Swedes are back into performance. Higher performance, actually, certainly for the money, than you can get in some of the S60's competitors. And some things also that you can't get at all in any of the competitors. Like, for instance, an engine that has both a turbo and a supercharger. That's pretty wild, particularly for Volvo. The reason for that is that the supercharger gives you immediate boost, being mechanically driven, whereas the turbo takes a moment to build up boost because it's driven by exhaust gases. And even though most manufacturers have almost eliminated turbo boost by snugging the turbo right up against the exhaust port so that the gases turn the impeller almost immediately, there is still always going to be that slight bit of lag, which you do not get with a supercharger. So Volvo's very radical approach was to put the supercharger there and the turbocharger. And get this, you can also get up to 415 horsepower in this thing in the hybrid version, which not only doesn't suck gas, it hauls incredibly, it hauls ass. 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. Now, the backstory here is that Volvo used to be the safety car. And of course, Volvo still sells cutting-edge safety stuff. However, every car is safe today. So Volvo smartly did something to differentiate itself from the other manufacturers, which also sell the same things that Volvo used to sell exclusively, or at least predominantly. So we've got this interesting turnabout of Volvos now being interesting cars, fun cars, sexy cars, as well as safe cars. Really, it's a beautiful car. You have to see this thing in person to appreciate the lines. And also, let me show you some stuff on the inside to show you, too, that Volvo is very much interested in the youth as opposed to the senescent. It's one of the first cars, other than a Tesla, to have largely eliminated most of the physical controls for, oh come on, stop beeping at me, for most of the secondary functions. You have, I'm trying to scan in on this so you can see it, this large touchscreen here, and you'll note the absence of most buttons. In fact, there are almost no buttons. Almost everything in this car now is controlled by touch. And that will not be a problem. In fact, it will appeal to most people under 40 who grew up native with the internet and computers. Whereas people who are in their 50s or above are going to look at this and go, oh, I'm intimidated, this is probably too much for me. So again, really interesting the way the dynamic has changed and things have shifted in the market. If you're interested in a mid-sized luxury sedan that, in addition to being safe, is also really good looking per Zoolander, and also has a lot of power, and in a number of ways actually undercuts its rivals in terms of what you get for your money. You really ought to look at this thing. I'm very favorably impressed by it. Almost nothing to not like about it. Let me see, I'll show you one thing that's kind of silly in my opinion, but Volvo does it because they have to do it. You may have heard about the yellow vest things, protests going on in France. Well, here you go. This is what the yellow vests. That's because in Europe, there's a requirement that you put on a yellow vest if you break down and you have to change a tire or anything like that. So it's not just Volvo. All the other manufacturers do the same thing, at least in the cars that they sell in Europe. But this is the first time I've found the yellow vests inside a press car in North America. So just an interesting little aside, but really there is virtually nothing to dislike or criticize about this car. I could go on and on about it. Another thing that I really like about it, the seats are exceptional. If you have a sore back or your butt gets tired on road trips, you ought to sit in this thing, and ideally for a few hours, to really appreciate how wonderful the seats are in this Volvo. I should have a full-length review up on the site later today, tomorrow at the latest, and I'll be on Bill Meyer's show today, actually in about an hour, so I got to go drink some coffee and get jacked up for that. Anyway, more up at epautos.com, the web's best libertarian gearhead site. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch up with you again soon.